Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is the Razer Naga Pro. This is a really interesting gaming mouse, as you can see from this intro shot, which includes 3 swappable side plates with numerous different button setups, and that is the initial appeal and highlight of this gaming mouse, but not the only one. It's a really interesting device with a number of really cool features to it, some serious specs under the hood, and a very nice design. Now this is a mouse that's kind of aimed at people who are not too sure what they want from their gaming mouse, whether they can't make up their mind whether they want an FPS mouse or an MMO mouse or a MOBA mouse, or they want the ability to be able to change out between those games. Let's say you're a sort of gamer that likes to play all of those different sorts of games and you want a mouse that sort of fits the bill, but you don't want to have to keep getting different mice or have a collection of different mice. So maybe you could use this one to just remove those side plates when you change games, and it's so easy to do as well. And I'm going to show you different highlights of this mouse as we go through this unboxing. This is an unboxing video, but I've been using this mouse for a couple of weeks, so I'm able to give you my thoughts on it and what it's like to use, the sort of areas it falls down on, and the highlights to it that make it really interesting. It is a very nice mouse with a number of really cool features to it. First of all, it uses Razer's Hyperspeed wireless technology, but it also connects to Bluetooth, so you can use it on both the wireless dongle and Bluetooth connectivity, and obviously in wired mode. You can get up to 150 hours of battery life out of it in Bluetooth mode, or 100 hours with the Hyperspeed wireless. That's obviously going to vary depending on your usage and the RGB lighting that you have that turned on. And it has a number of other highlights that include Razer's optical mouse switches, which actuate at a really fast speed at 0.2 milliseconds. Basically uses an infrared light beam to register your mouse clicks, and this is a technology that Razer's been using in several mice of late, and it basically results in a very quick and accurate press on the mouse, and it's very nice in that way. Also, because of these side plates, you can basically have up to 19 programmable buttons, and that includes with Razer's Hypershift technology, meaning that you can press a button on the mouse, set that up as a Hypershift button, and then basically set a secondary action for all the buttons on the mouse as well. So you've got an insane amount of button capabilities there if you want it, or you could just put the side plate on with those 2 thumb buttons and then make use of the other buttons on the mouse and make it nice and simple. So you can obviously have the side plate for your MMO games with loads and loads of buttons on there, or you can just go down to a couple of buttons if you want something simple for FPS. And you'll notice a difference between these as well as you go through and show it off, that they have different grips on them too, so depending on what your play style is. Underneath you have DTFE feet, that will show off again in a minute, and it has a sensor that goes up to 20,000 dpi in 5 different levels that are customizable within Razer Synapse software, and I'll show you that a bit later on as well and talk through the different settings in that you can adjust and tweak. Now here you can see the removal process for those side plates. They come off really easily. They're held in place with a magnet, and underneath you get the little 2.4 gigahertz Hyperspeed wireless dongle. A nice storage dock for it when it's not in use, so you can tuck it away there and not lose it. And obviously you can plug that into your PC, and that's how you get the solid, accurate connection. And those plates can come off really easily and then switch back in with ease. Take a moment to give a quick shout out to Meaty Keyboard and Raw, who are my 2 YouTube members that help support the channel. By clicking that join button, you can find out more on the benefits of being a member of my channel. Now you just show off all the different facets to this mouse, and you can see the different highlights of it already. It's quite a large mouse. It's not the smallest one I've tried, and it's not the biggest one by any means either, but I did feel like it was larger in the hand than some of the other Razer mice I've tested recently, and that's no bad thing because it's a very comfortable fit in that way. Obviously, with having a multitude of side buttons on it, if the mouse isn't quite big enough, then those buttons are going to be small and not easy to access, but they are fairly easy to get hold of on this one. One thing I did note though, that you might hear if I'm quiet for a moment, is a little bit of play in the left and right mouse buttons, and basically results in a kind of creak and click to it when you don't necessarily want it, which isn't ideal. In the box you also get this little dock, which basically allows you to plug the USB cable into your PC and then into the other end of the dock, not like this, the other way around, with the small end going in, and then you can put the USB dongle on your desk, so you can basically extend the length of that dongle and get it closer to your mouse, but it also means you have easier access to it and you can basically unplug that dock and plug your mouse into it. Underneath it plugs in with a micro USB connection, not USB-C unfortunately, but you will see that it does have two little metal prongs under there. Now you can buy separately Razer's Chroma dock, which allows you to basically put the mouse on top of it when you're not using it, and that'll charge, and it uses the little prongs in there as a connection to then charge that up. Saw that with Razer's Basilisk Ultimate, and it was a really nice little dock, and I'd recommend getting it actually because it does make a difference. It means you'd never have to plug the mouse in when you're not using it. You just drop it on that dock and it charges up nice and easily. You'll also see those PTFE feet and the buttons underneath switch between 2.4 gigahertz and Bluetooth, and you can do that really easily as well, and the connection's nice and solid there too. I really like how easily these side plates come off. You can see they're just loosely held in place with a magnet, and those magnets are strong enough that when you get that side plate within a slight distance from the mouse, it just automatically clips into place and snaps in. So there's no messing about trying to make sure that clips are going in or fiddling trying to latch it down or anything like that. You'll also see here, as you can see, a nice little bit of a rubber grip underneath the one with 6 buttons on it, and you have the same sort of affair on the one with 2. So a bit more of a comfortable grip. So where there aren't loads of buttons, you get these extra grips to make sure you're holding onto it nicely. And obviously if you're playing an FPS game, something a bit faster pace, like the one with 6 buttons you might use for Battle Royale as their suggestion, and FPS with the 2 buttons, obviously you're perhaps in the thick of the action a bit more. And I did find that if you try and use the 12 button one for an FPS game, I found personally that there's just too much going on and the grip's not as good, but that's obviously going to vary from person to person. It's a personal preference. You might find it's perfectly fine like that. Another niggle I had, and I'll show you in a second, but essentially you have left and right click on the mouse wheel, which is great in theory because it means you can customize a left and right direction on the mouse wheel to then be an extra button press. Fantastic. However, what I found is, for me personally, when I try and use that mouse wheel as just pushing the mouse wheel as you would certain actions in games, I found that it pushed in and to the side, and so there's a little bit of play in the mouse wheel as well, which basically means that when I expected a certain behavior, it actually did something completely different. So by pushing it in to try and get a middle mouse button press, it was actually pushing to the left slightly, so it wasn't registering that press properly. And if you program something else, it would do that action instead, which was a niggle in fast-paced games where you're trying to get a middle mouse press for a melee or something, and then it just doesn't react as you'd expect it to, which is a bit of a shame. I have seen better implementation of left and right click, and I feel like even on other Razer mice, somehow this one's just a bit too wide and loose and a bit easy to press. Again, that's a subjective thing. You might not have a problem with it. It could just be I'm a clumsy buffoon, but those were the niggles for me, is that button press, which is a bit of a pain. Now the mouse itself though, very nice looking, very comfortable to use. Obviously with those PTFE feet, it's pretty agile and nimble on the desk, and I'll leave all the specifications in the description so you can check out all the data on there. But in practice, it's a very nimble mouse. Obviously you can customize the DPI levels in 5 different settings. I've set up to 20,000 DPI, which is insane. 20,000 is just bonkers. I don't know why anyone would want that. It's far too fast for me. But certainly it's nice to be able to customize those. You have DPI switching buttons on top, so you can easily switch between those. Although it's worth noting that you can customize those buttons to do something else. If you use a set DPI and you never want to change to anything else, you can easily just adjust those buttons to be used for some other reason. During the use, I hadn't had to charge it up much at all. As I said, you can get up to 100 hours of battery life out of it, so it's pretty insane in terms of the battery life that it delivers. And here you can see the close-up of that left and right click. Makes a satisfying noise when it does it, but it's remarkably easy to move it left and right. Now, if you're playing a slow-paced game, a single-player game where it doesn't really matter that much, that's fine, because obviously you've got that action there, you've got extra buttons. If you've got the 12-plate side plate on, and you've got left and right click on there, and you've got the DPI buttons that you can change, you've got an insane amount of buttons that you can program there. 19 plus 1 is what they say, is the customization options, and you press that hyper speed, do the Hypershift within Razer Synapse software, set a secondary press. You've got so many buttons that you can customize, it's ridiculous. But here you can see a bit more of the action on those mouse buttons. You can click at the front, you can also click right at the back, and I just feel like it feels a bit noisy It's nice that you can actuate these quickly, but it makes a lot of noise when you're using it, which can be distracting and is a bit of a niggle. Now on the right hand side you will note there's a little bit of an ergonomic design here where it basically allows for a slight pinky rest, or finger rest anyway, keeps your right hand side of your fingers and hand off the desk, which is a nice addition. It's certainly different to other rests that I've seen, but a very nice fit anyway. It's been very comfortable to use and I've thoroughly enjoyed it for a number of different reasons. There's just been a few minor niggles, as you can see. Now, one interesting highlight to it is the lighting. The RGB lighting is actually surprisingly bright. You only have essentially two zones, that Razer logo, and then around the mouse wheel as well. If you buy the Chroma dock, you obviously get RGB lighting on that too, so you can potentially get some extra, but that is an additional purchase. It is surprisingly bright lighting and looks really nice. It's customizable within the software, and again I'll show you that in a minute, and you can tweak the levels of it. Obviously adjusting the levels of it is going to result in reduced battery life if you have it on maximum brightness all the time, so it's worth bearing that in mind before you go crazy on it. But it is generally nice. One of the things I do like about it is that when you're running low on battery life, it will automatically go into a sort of low battery mode, but it also lets you know that the battery's running low by flashing the RGB lighting red on the mouse, so you can see in the hardware without having to go in the software that it needs charging up. Now if we go into Razer Synapse software, I'm just going to show you picture in picture so you can see the mouse in action here, but one of the things I noticed immediately is that when you take those side plates off, the software automatically recognizes which one you've got attached, and it does it instantly. You don't need to switch between them, so you don't need to tell it and let it know what one you're using. It automatically recognizes that, and it just switches to that mode so that you can then customize the buttons for that faceplate, and that's a nice option. Below that you'll see that there's the standard setting. If you click on that, as I'll show you a bit later on, you can basically switch into the Hypershift mode, which means you can set up a secondary press. So if you press and hold one of the buttons on the mouse, you can then set up the Hypershift button, which allows you to add a secondary functionality to any of the other mouse buttons. You go into a secondary mode, which means that even the one with just two buttons on it, you can add extra buttons to the mouse, which is really nice. Really thought that was cool, the way it just changes between it, automatically instantly lights up and lets you customize the extra buttons as well. Button customization is also really easy. Just click on the button and then you can go through a number of different options in here, and you can see you have the default settings. You have keyboard functions, mouse functions, sensitivity, into device, Razer's Hypershift that I was talking about a second ago. You can set it to launch a program. You can even adjust things like the speed of the mouse clicks, adjusting the sensitivity. And if you want to, you could set up a button press to change the chroma RGB effects. Now, for testing purposes, I'll just quickly set it up as an example, just to demonstrate what you can do with it. There's all sorts of flexibility here, and obviously if you have the 12-button mouse plate installed, then you might want to use it for a number of different reasons, outside of gaming perhaps. So I'm going to set it here to launch NZXT's CAM software, which basically allows me to change the RGB lighting in my machine, but also to get an overview of the current performance and temperature settings at a glance really easily. Now what I'm doing here is now I'm setting up that one button instead as a Hypershift button. So this is what I was saying earlier on. You can basically program one of those buttons to basically take you into the secondary mode. So you have to press and hold one now to activate that mode, and then when you do that, a second press on another button will do something else. So for an example, just to demonstrate, I'm setting it up to launch youtube.com when I press and hold one and then tap 2 on the mouse. And so you use a bit more of a fiddle to do, but it basically means that you have that secondary action. You see, if you press 2 on its own, it doesn't do anything, but if you press and hold 1 and then click 2, it'll do it. So you could have 2 set up to do something completely different normally, but then when you press the Hypershift button, it does that other action. You are going to have to remember a lot of different things if you reprogram all 12 buttons on the side with Hypershift, but it does mean that you've got an incredible amount of flexibility in there. Obviously you can add in macros, you could change the lighting, you could adjust DPI, you can do all sorts of things in here. Razer's software is pretty powerful for that sort of thing. Now here you can see the sensitivity levels is set up to 5 different stages. It starts at 400 and as default goes up to 6400, but you can max it out at 20,000, which is just insane. Really quick, far too fast to be honest for most people. You'll notice the polling rate is at 1000 Hz as well, and you can adjust that and lower it if you want. Easy to do. And you also notice that the sensitivity levels have 5 stages as default, but you can reduce them. And as I said, you can switch between those with the DPI buttons on top of the mouse behind the mouse wheel. Another thing you can do is the tracking. This is basically the cutoff point in terms of the distance, the lift-off distance from the surface. And I don't think the lift-off distance is great with this mouse, I'll be honest. It says you can set it a bit higher, but when I've tried it, it hasn't really responded very well. You can, however, customize your surface. You can input surfaces that you've got from Razer, or you can use a custom one. In my case, I'm using Corsair's XL mousepad, and I just want to set it up and customize that so the mouse knows what sort of surface I'm using. I'm basically rubbing it in Razer's face that I've chosen to use Corsair's mouse mat instead of theirs. But basically you follow that pattern and then it calibrates the mouse to respond. Again, surface distance settings, not that fantastic. Now when you go into the brightness settings, you can see you can adjust the brightness levels on the lighting, and it makes quite a bit of a difference. The lighting goes down quite low. Obviously you can turn it all the way off if you want to save battery, but on the brightest, even at night, under harsh lighting for video, it still stands out quite well. You obviously have the option to choose from a number of different effects as well. There are quick effects, audio meter which responds to the sound. You have static effects where you can choose from, breathing, reactive, and all sorts of other ones. You can change the speed of them and obviously the brightness as well. Quite like the reactive one, basically reacts every time you press it. Fairly straightforward. If you're au fait with RGB lighting, then you'll understand this already. You can obviously also dive into Chroma Studio and change that around with other Chroma devices too. So the end result is a very nice mouse, really interesting, quite large in the hand, comfortable to use, accurate, and with a number of really nifty highlights to it that include a multitude of button capabilities and the ability to switch out those faceplates on the fly and make it your own. Hope you found this video useful. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. Thanks for watching. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Hope you found it useful, interesting, hilarious, or all of the above. Be sure to check out the description for other information you might find interesting, and subscribe and watch these other videos as well that I think might be useful to you, and have a great life.